Hi, everyone. I am Barbara Holzapfel, Vice President Education at Microsoft. I'm absolutely honored to be part of ISTE, and I really appreciate that you're joining me for the session. I'm looking forward to sharing some of the insights we've gathered from listening to education experts, system leaders, and classroom teachers over the past several months. COVID-19 has caused the convergence of three crises: a public health crisis, an economic crisis, and in many parts of the world, a humanitarian crisis. And education is at the intersection of all three. On the one side, the three other aspects directly impact educational opportunities. For example, through the public health crisis, many schools had to close altogether, limiting education for millions of students. The economic crisis can impact if and how a student has an opportunity for education and learning. And the humanitarian crisis of severe loss can cause lifelong trauma for the students. On the other side, of course, education can serve as a powerful motor and engine for a better future. So as the pandemic spread around the world, more than 1.6 billion students had their formal education disrupted. That is an enormous scale and impact that we've gone through over the last several months. Plus, an additional estimated 24 million children and youth could drop out or not have access to school next year due to the pandemic's economic impact alone, according to the UN Secretary General's policy brief on education. So the experience across and within countries has also been very different, depending on each country and region's resources and government. So the extent to which all of the students around the world have been impacted or have been able to stay in their education journey has varied widely all across the world. So throughout the last 6 months, or actually by now almost 8 months, schools and universities responded in various ways according to their circumstances and their resources and how well they felt prepared. So some of them were able to move really quickly to remote learning, while others had to temporarily close the schools and universities altogether. But despite all of these challenges, the situation has provided an accelerator for schools and school systems to rethink the delivery of education, rethink the prioritization of different aspects of education, and to rethink how resources are being allocated to ensure as many students as possible can stay in their educational journey. So as part of this process, and to address the challenges facing them, education leaders have been looking for answers basically for 5 core questions. The first one is, how can we ensure equity in educational opportunities and make sure students are not being left behind? What is the best way to actually encourage and evaluate engagement in a remote environment when you're not in a classroom and can see how students are participating? How can we maintain the aspects of social connectedness in learning? We all know how important and how much of a social experience learning is. And what is the role of technology in the remote and hybrid classroom? And how can we integrate pedagogy with technology and shift technology from being a vehicle for transmission to a mechanism for collaboration, social connectedness, and culture building? As we know, and as you can imagine, these are all incredibly complex questions that do not have simple answers. And they will take some time to explore and address as we move forward. And this is all part of taking education from responding to the disruption to reimagining and creating positive change for the future of learning. Now, education systems have always been in a state of continuous evolution and reform to respond to learning research as well as to economic and social changes and demands. We've seen a lot of digital transformation over the past 10 years, but COVID-19 has accelerated the transformation, and we've seen years worth of change in just a matter of weeks and months. So this acceleration has brought a tremendous amount of disruption, but as well as an incredible opportunity. And it's really important, especially in this moment, to recognize the stress that this has caused for families, the students, and the teachers and educators all around the world. So I also want to say a big thank you to all of the educators who've just done an incredible job and gone out of their way to keep the students engaged in learning and found new and innovative ways to do that. So just a heartfelt thank you at this point as well. On the other side, this acceleration of change also really brings the opportunity to reimagine the future of education. How do we want to move forward, and how can we take the learnings from the last several months into what we want the future of education to be like? And there are a few key elements of this transformation that will play a very critical role as we move forward. So soon after everything changed in the spring, we started working with the education experts at New Pedagogies for Deep Learning to learn from examples around the world and to develop insights to help schools and systems outline a strategy for moving through the crisis and into a future-focused system. This work has been summarized in the paper Reimagining Education from Remote to Hybrid Learning. As part of this work, we found and identified three key phases that schools, universities, and education systems are having to navigate. In the first moment, it was all about how to respond to the crisis and the disruption in the most timely manner. Then we saw a transition phase and how to think about the next school year, and then to take all of those learnings to reimagine education in a sustainable way for the longer term. So let's take a quick look at each one of these phases in more detail. If we look at the first phase of respond, this was the initial emergency response that organizations implemented in the early months of physical schools closing. In this phase, schools and universities had to move extremely quickly. So it was all about that fast response. A great example is the University of Bologna in Italy. As we all know, Italy got hit very hard very early in the pandemic. So the University of Bologna moved 90% of their classes to remote learning via Teams within just 4 days. That's 3,600 classes for 87,000 students in just 4 days. So a tremendous achievement by everyone at the University of Bologna to keep all of those students engaged in learning. If we look at the K-12 side, and back here in the US, the largest school district in Kansas, Wichita Public Schools, was able to respond really quickly as well. The district includes 94 schools, more than 50,000 students, and more than 10,000 teachers and staff. So when schools closed in the spring, they accelerated their plans to get devices into the hands of the students and were able to deploy 32,000 devices in just 5 days. In addition, they personalized each student's device with applications customized based on the student's classes. And that personalization is such a critical aspect, especially in remote learning, to really cater to the way each student learns and make sure everyone is making progress. So their commitment to students continued with a focus on enabling regular classroom interactions as much as possible using Microsoft Teams and trying to replicate that sort of personal interaction by seeing each other and by leveraging all the collaboration aspects that Teams provides for. Rob Dixon, the district school CIO, gave us this fabulous quote that you can obviously read on the slide, and just bringing out that social aspect of learning and having those meaningful conversations in a classroom setting or as close as a classroom setting that is possible. So also a huge thank you to the entire team at the Wichita Public School District. Now, if we forward to the transition phase, this is a really critical planning phase when education leaders look at what are the options for reopening, be it in a fully remote setting, in a hybrid and remote setting, or fully in person. And a lot of schools and school systems are still in this phase now, or keep going back to that phase as things change. And that's where educators are working to provide a safe and healthy environment for the students and the staff, and continuing to evaluate and improve their systems for delivering quality learning for all. There's a recent study from Manchester Street Research called Disruptions and Opportunities, Key Lessons from the Spring of 2020. And what they found was that for remote learning to be really effective, there must be meaningful engagement and interaction between the students and the teachers, and that teachers need to be able to accurately assess the student progress to see where and how they can best help the students in their education journey in a remote setting. The study also found that teachers that were using Microsoft Teams were 29% more likely to describe most of their students as highly engaged. We also found that those users were on average 23% more likely to say they feel confident in their ability to assess the learning outcomes while teaching remotely. And they were 42% more likely to collaborate with other teachers to share information and learnings. And I think particularly this last point is really critical because, again, there was no playbook for how to do this. This is a pandemic that hit. And so having the teachers share and collaborate those best practices and helping each other move forward was something really, really powerful. Another really interesting example in this transition phase is the Miami-Dade School District in Florida, and that illustrates the importance of clear direction and training when it comes to selecting and rolling out a learning platform. So the Miami-Dade School District had already committed to a Windows device plan for the students and a Microsoft Teams-based learning delivery and staff communication strategy. That was already their plan. And the pandemic forced them to roll out the implementation of this much faster than they had initially planned. But they were able to make the transition with their 345,000 students across almost 400 different schools and a staff of over 40,000 and keep the students engaged and learning. So it's a great example of how having a strategy and looking at that in advance and being prepared and really looking at technology at that core enabler helped them to then move really, really quickly when they had to. Now, if we look at the third phase, which is all about reimagining education. And in this phase, what we see the education leaders do is building on the best of traditional in-classroom approaches, as well as new and innovative practices, and applying the insights and the learnings from the last couple of months to think about how do we shape a new and flexible hybrid model where we can take advantage of what we've learned to find ways to engage the students in very different ways as we move forward. A great example for that is the Fresno Unified School District in California. This district is one of the largest in California and one of the most economically diverse districts. And they have been reimagining the district for quite some time with a very intentional, personalized learning initiative. The model that they've chosen here is really centered on student voice, choice, and collaboration, combined with the deployment of technology for every student. So it's this very student-centric approach that they've chosen and orchestrated everything around that. And students who've had teachers involved in the personalized learning initiative showed statistically significant differences, performing better in 6 out of 10 subjects, including math and English, some of those core numeracy and literacy. We're also seeing this happening across many other parts of the world, both across K-12 and higher education. And we've chosen a couple of examples here that we can all learn from. For example, the Ministry of Education in Senegal, where they had, a very big population of students, highly geographically dispersed. bringing them together through remote learning. The Thomas Alva Edison School in Argentina and the University of South Florida here in the US, just to name a few. And what the thread that runs through all of this is how they've really integrated technology into pedagogy and looking at that holistic and aligned model. And that will help them move forward in a way that gives them the flexibility, but also the safety for their staff and students as they navigate remote and hybrid learning as we move forward. So the past 7 or 8 months have been very difficult for everyone. But it's really encouraging and inspiring to see how people around the world have taken up the challenge to adapt and innovate. So what do we think education will look like as we move forward? So as education leaders and educators work together to move education forward, what we've seen them focus on is on creating environments that are accessible, equitable, student-centric, and powered by technology in a large scale. So as we think about the priorities in this reimagined model, and with a notion and priority to empower all learners, what we see evolve is an experience that is personalized to the specific needs of the students. So again, a very student-centric approach that is socially embedded, that draws on those connections between students and students, student and teacher, and bringing those pieces together, that it's inclusive for all learners and all learning abilities. If you think about just how many students around the world have learning challenges, be it dyslexia, dysgraphia, or other challenges, technology can play a huge role here by providing them with tools such as the immersive reader that really helps them to unlock the learning and their passion for learning and keeping them engaged in learning. Safety and security is absolutely paramount, especially in a remote setting. So that's a key consideration for any learning platform, and making sure that that safety and security is really baked in to the entire approach. And finally, that these things can be powered by data and insights. And again, that's where technology can provide really fascinating insights for the system leaders, the district leaders, but also the educators in, most importantly, how are the students progressing? How are my students engaging with the learning materials? And are they making the progress that they need to? And how can I best help support them? When can I see that they're struggling? And what is the best course of intervention and support? All of these things come together when there is a very clear strategy between pedagogy and technology, and when it's delivered using a unified set of technology tools. We all know this is an ongoing journey, and education will always be in this continuous mode of evolution. Educators will continue to adapt and integrate new learning approaches and technologies. And for all of us at Microsoft, we are honored to be a part and a partner on this journey. And I'm so excited to see the innovations that the partnership inspires. So thank you again for the opportunity to be with you today, albeit remotely. And I hope you're enjoying the rest of ISTE. And let me just end again on just a big notion of thank you and gratitude to all the teachers that have done just incredible work over the last couple of months. So thank you for keeping the students engaged, and enjoy the rest of ISTE. Thank you.